Hello, my name is John, and today on Mono Story we're going to be talking about Ludwig does not defend One Piece. So let's get into it and find out what it's all about.
I have no fucking clue. I think he lied about having a shock collar.
You got 4 teammates. Okay.
We have a Vile Plume.
Dangerous.
Let's up those numbers!
Recently, the podcast known as The Yard spoke about One Piece fans and how they are similar to Diet Coke fans, specifically Ludwig. And so today in this clip, we're going to look at whether Ludwig was correct or not, as well as all the other hosts and their opinion on One Piece and One Piece fans.
I'm saying the way, because One Piece fans think One Piece is amazing, and it is. And other people are like, there's no way it's that great.
The value proposition of Diet Coke is so simple and positive and straightforward, I feel like.
But
and the first 100 episodes of One Piece are terrible.
So the first point that Ludwig makes is that One Piece fans are similar to Diet Coke fans, and Ludwig says this because One Piece fans think One Piece is amazing, similar to how Diet Coke fans think Diet Coke is amazing. However, his colleague and co-host Aiden states the opposite, saying that it is a value proposition among other things. And in my opinion, this statement is very difficult to understand because the string of words used to explain this situation is very illogical. And so in my opinion, I don't think value proposition is a very good terminology to use in describing something that an audience is trying to understand. Rather, just saying the word value would be more significant because it is more understandable to the modern audience and an individual that is listening to this podcast. However, in my opinion, based on the string of words that were used to explain One Piece, yes, One Piece has a lot of value on a surface level for any individual. However, there is also a lot more depth to the story, providing a lot of value to a lot of different people, depending on the level they wish to go into One Piece and the amount they want to learn from the story. Meaning the statement that Aiden makes saying that One Piece is a bad statement to begin with no factual evidence to even start the whole entire conversation.
The first 100 episodes of One Piece are terrible.
they're not terrible. Arlong Park isn't terrible. You just don't like art.
I like what you like.
Point 2 states that One Piece's first 100 episodes is terrible, and this is stated by Aiden, saying that they are terrible, and Ludwig tries to defend this, saying no, that is not true, and he also states that Arlong Park was good. Now, before speaking, he could have also checked, in this case Ludwig, the 100 episode and what that point was, so he could have given even more depth and knowledge of his ability and understanding of One Piece to show what scenes were amazing in One Piece other than Arlong Park as a specific arc. And at the 100th episode, just to give reference, it is Rebel Warrior Koza, the dream sworn to Vivi. So this is actually in the Alabasta arc, meaning we have even more moments that make One Piece shine. For example, Zoro versus 100 people, Chopper's introduction, Robin's introduction, not to mention all of East Blue, which we would have seen before Arlong Park, Logtown, Laboon, and now that isn't a perfect watch, but it is still a good watch, and there is still so many moments that to this day are very important to One Piece. And so the fact that this person, Aiden, can say these things about One Piece, stating that the first 100 episodes are terrible, but not give any context, reasoning, or rationale as to what in those 100 episodes was terrible, then it really does lower his understanding of not only One Piece, but his credibility, because he hasn't actually given us any form of physical evidence through his words that he has watched One Piece.
Usopp's voice sounds like if you put my hand through the meat cleaver at Jimmy John's.
Wow.
Point 3 is that Aiden once again states something in regards to One Piece. This time he is talking about Usopp's voice, and in my opinion this is a very unintelligent statement which is very illogical, based on the fact that Aiden cannot explain the story but says the voice of a character is the reason he dislikes the story or the show. The guy's reason is very bad because the reason is something based on the sounds of an individual rather than the fluidity and cohesiveness of the storytelling. Now, I'm not saying that if a voice actor's voice is bad we should ignore it, but lots of people have watched One Piece with this voice actor for a very long time. I mean, Usopp's voice actor has probably voiced Usopp since the beginning of One Piece. So if people can watch all of these episodes and not have a problem with Usopp's voice or minimal issues, then the only person who has a problem with the voice is Aiden. And in this case, Aiden is the fool in this situation because he is speaking about that rather than the story and how it is either good or bad.
Did you even watch the first 100? Why the first 100, man?
Sorry, I watched it. I lied. I exaggerated. I watched the first 85.
Point 4 is again with Aiden stating that he didn't actually watch 100 episodes. So now we have even less credibility to Aiden because he has further on stated that he didn't actually watch 100 episodes. It was actually 80 episodes, meaning that all the statements he had said previously now come into question as to what content he has actually watched of One Piece from the anime, because he is using that to base his statements and his thought process upon how the story of One Piece is either good or bad.
I really enjoyed the first 250 chapters of the manga, but the anime is not for me.
Why didn't you like Arlong Park?
Because the pacing of the show is bad. It is a bad television show.
Point 5 again with Aiden. This is the third point now, but he then states that he's read the manga but is angry with the pacing in the One Piece anime. And again, Aiden further states now that he's read 250 chapters. So he hasn't watched 100 episodes, he's watched 80 episodes, but he's read now 250 chapters. And to give context, what is chapter 250? It is Ball Dragon. Now you're wondering where that is from. That is midway through Skypiea. So now we have even more evidence that he's less credible because he has not stated a single scene in One Piece in the past minute to 2 minutes he's been talking, and he has yet to tell us why he doesn't like One Piece other than now pacing or Usopp's voice, and nothing to do with the story in regards to the actual story beats of what is happening in the story. And so for reference, we have even more evidence of things that would have been moments in One Piece that are memorable to all of us One Piece fans. And these are things such as the Jaya arc, learning things about Skypiea's backstory. And yet when Aiden is asked about a single piece of information in regards to Arlong Park, he doesn't give us any information. He flips it, deflects it, and then talks about pacing in One Piece. Now, I understand pacing is bad. I think every One Piece fan knows that pacing is bad in the anime for a very long time, especially at the start with Toei Production trying to milk as much money as they possibly can off of One Piece running weekly at that point in time. But you just can't deflect that statement and then state that the pacing is bad without giving us any evidence as to why Arlong Park was a bad arc. And if you have read 250 chapters, as I said, midway through Skypiea, you are very close to one of, if not the most important arc for any One Piece fan. That is Water 7, Enies Lobby. After you watch that arc, you are now in a position where you can decide whether you want to continue with One Piece or you want to stop with One Piece. And so again, this brings even less credibility to any statement Aiden is making in regards to One Piece and One Piece fans, as he has stated 100 episodes, 250 chapters, not a single scene.
And he puts a hat on Nami.
Yeah, it's fucking annoying. And in the manga, I just go flip.
Well, yeah, flip. This is...
Point 6 is that Aiden then states how he reads the manga, and immediately we see that his reading is very unique. He goes flip, flip, flip. He doesn't actually seem like he reads what is on the page, or he reads it too fast that he doesn't actually comprehend what is happening. And when Ludwig tells him one of the most important scenes in One Piece in the start at East Blue, with Nami getting the hat from Luffy, the straw hat, one of the most important things to Luffy, we just get from Aiden a no sort of emotion, no connection, no thought about anything to do with One Piece. It's like, oh, okay, you said something, Ludwig. All right, I'm just going to continue on talking whatever I want to say, and with no evidence, no basis, no logic, and the audience is just going to love me for it. Yeah, of course. And so at this point, I just don't understand why Aiden has not stopped talking. Why is he still going on when we have already dissected that he doesn't actually know anything about One Piece? He's just speaking out of pure necessity to show his intelligence. I mean, if you can't tell from value proposition, again, I'm not trying to attack the character, but the individual is using words that do not fit his vocabulary and ability to express himself effectively, then it's quite obvious the individual does not know what they are kindly saying in a respectable manner to other individuals, especially about One Piece fans. Or One Piece for that matter.
Real question. Is it ethical goons to watch something like One Piece on 1.5x or faster?
Point 7 is now stated by a person known as Slime, another co-host on The Yard, and Slime states that you should maybe watch it at 1.5 speed if that is possible. And Slime, I want to speak to you directly. What are you talking about? Are you crazy? Do you watch every show at 1.5 speed or just One Piece because it's too long? Watch it normally, take some breaks, or watch it slowly. Regardless, don't try and rush it because you want to join in the conversation or you want to know what's happening in One Piece. You're going to miss important points of information that will become vital in the future parts of One Piece. If you don't watch Skypiea, you're not going to understand about the gods. If you don't watch things such as Arlong Park, then you can't understand Fishman Island arc. And therefore, you should either watch it normally, read the manga, use One Piece or skip filler. Figure it out, but do not watch it at 1.5 speed. You're going to miss important things, and it's going to become a very boring task. And you're going to get to Elbaf and be like, what's happening? Why are there giants here? What is Luffy's hair going white for? And everyone's going to look at you like, what are you talking about, Slime? What are you talking about?
Ignorant anime questions. Was the manga just as long?
The manga is, what do you mean?
It's still going. Don't say was.
Oh, is it? Oh, it's still going alongside the animated show.
Yes, it's ahead.
The manga leads the charge.
Oh, I
Usually how
didn't know
the
that.
case is.
Point 8 is stating that Nick is confused, and on this podcast of The Yard, there is another co-host known as Nick, and he doesn't know that One Piece is actually not finished yet, so he asks and he states, isn't it finished? And he's asking out of respect because he generally doesn't actually know, and I really have a lot of respect for this Nick individual who is on this podcast known as The Yard, because he is one of the only people that doesn't speak out of turn, doesn't say things that he doesn't actually understand about, and is trying to understand what is happening in this manga with the best of his ability, with the amount of time he has been given to actually make a statement on One Piece. And in response to this, we see both Aiden and Ludwig responding, no, not yet. And Aiden again trying to get his information in, speaks like he actually understands One Piece, but both him and Ludwig do not even say a single scene about anything currently happening in One Piece. In Elbaf, the Giants, we're talking about the Holy Knights. Nothing is mentioned. We are just getting a statement from both of them saying that it has not finished.
The manga's not coming out fast enough to make the show paced well, because
that's not right.
Point 9 states that Aiden claims the manga is not coming out as fast enough for the pacing, and this point I believe at one point was true. The manga was coming out so slow at some points that the anime was actually catching up to the manga. Like, it may have been 1 or 2 chapters, maybe even a few 5 to 10 chapters behind. So what the anime had to do was slow down the pacing, which is why, again, pacing is an issue in the previous One Piece anime, and we're getting a reboot from Wit Studios. However, the big issue I have is they didn't talk about now One Piece has become seasonal. Important to know, again, seasonal. So that means that it has changed for Elbaf, and so neither of them again stated this, meaning they're not either up to date or they're not keeping up with One Piece, which I have no problem with. But then you can't talk about One Piece the way you have been talking about One Piece. And Ludwig is not defending anything if he isn't stating the actual truth of what is happening in the current situation of One Piece.
We have to wait 20 seconds for Luffy.
Dad wants to teach
We look
football,
at
Mom wants to
Luffy.
get
We look
sensitive.
at the backside of Luffy's arm and Arlong standing in a park for about 15 minutes longer than we need to.
This existed in the first 100 episodes, and there was a lot of manga then, and they caught up. But it's just
It's crazy. So the TV guys were bad at their job.
yeah, I
even
think
worse.
I think most agree that Toei Animation hasn't done an amazing job, which is why there is a Mappa remake to begin.
Point 10, and the final point that really settles everything about this clip and this podcast, is Aiden finally gives us some evidence. He states Luffy is looking at Arlong while he is standing in the park for a long time. And the reason he is stating this is because Ludwig has been stating this the whole time. Luffy and Arlong at Arlong Park. That has been it. And so he's capitalizing on his inability to understand and know One Piece by utilizing this one piece of information to create a situation that he understands and knows One Piece. Where if he actually had read the manga or watched the anime, which he has been stating he's watched 100 episodes, 250 chapters, by the way, then he would have stated other things that happened at Arlong Park. Luffy grabs Arlong's teeth. Luffy puts his feet in the ground. Both Arlong and Luffy go into Nami's old room. He could have said anything from Arlong Park. He could have said anything from One Piece up until Skypiea with all the evidence he has been giving us, and yet we have nothing. 250 chapters, 100 episodes, nothing. No single scene. Pacing, voice actors, but nothing about the fluidity and the beauty of the story and the character developments and their backstories of each individual character at least. I mean, you would at least know about Zoro, Nami, Usopp, Sanji, something, please. What is this clip? What are you talking about on this podcast if you cannot even say a single clip about One Piece? And then you go on to have the audacity to say that the animators are bad at their job. Do you know how much animators get paid? Do you know how hard they work? I think before you talk about animators and the animation of One Piece and its pacing and its voicing, then you should look at your own job and think about yourself and say, I don't think you're verified or able to do this job because you have said nothing in the past 4 to 5 minutes of this clip of any importance. You have literally made it the exact opposite. Nobody wants to go watch One Piece after what you have stated. You have literally made everyone dumber in this 5-minute clip. I have to now unload my brain from what you have just said for the past 5 minutes on the illogical fallacies you have created. You're an absolute fool. Fool, I tell ya.
くだらねえ愛に死ねえ。
ロジコ、ナミ、死なないで。大好き。
The first 100 episodes of One Piece are terrible. Luffy's arm and Arlong standing in a park for about 15 minutes longer than we need to.
This is one of the worst clips I've ever seen in regards to people talking about One Piece. I understand if you don't know everything about One Piece or you're behind on One Piece, it's okay. There is a lot of content, like I said, and other people have been saying. There is over 1,000 chapters, 1,000 episodes, so I understand if you're behind. That being said, this is one of the worst takes by the yard. There are a bunch of larpers, except for Nick. I think Nick is the only individual in this whole entire podcast that has the most respect for One Piece in this clip from what I have seen. And they let this guy Aiden talk forever about One Piece and how he keeps on saying it's bad due to pacing and voices, but he hasn't stated one single moment in One Piece that makes it beautiful or bad. Not a single point, which tells us, the audience, that he has actually not watched One Piece or even read the manga. And Ludwig has defended nothing. He has absolutely let his friend talk absolute smack about One Piece, where he could have said, okay, you read 100 chapters, tell me something about One Piece, and shut his mouth, and then Aiden would have to say something about One Piece. Or Aiden says, oh, I've read 250 chapters. Ludwig goes, okay, tell me a scene. And this is the best way to stop anybody who is lying or LARPing over any form of medium, not only anime or manga or movies. It could be anything. All you have to do is keep your mouth shut, ask one question, and let them try answer it. And if you don't give them the answer, you will find out your answer naturally, because they can't talk smack, they can't talk crap, they can't talk anything. This Aiden character is an absolute stupid person who's illogical, and the fact that we all have to listen to him, and the fact you don't call him out on his absolute stupidity because he doesn't actually know anything about One Piece, is your fault, Ludwig. You are the one who is in control of this situation. You're the one trying to state to this individual, Aiden is allowed to get away with all of this. He has said so many bad things about One Piece, and you haven't even called him out once, Ludwig. This is your fault. This clip is stupid. You shouldn't be called out for defending One Piece. You should be called out for not defending One Piece, being a One Piece fan. You're much of a LARPer as your friend over here, Aiden, is. Accept responsibility and apologize to the One Piece fans now. But that is my thoughts on this. Ludwig does not defend One Piece, but I want to hear what you think about this situation. Do you think I'm right or wrong? Do you think Ludwig is right or wrong? Or do you think Aiden actually doesn't know anything about One Piece, which is, based on my evidence, correct? But you can make your own decision, I think, and please write that down in the comment section below. My name is John from Mono Story. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and press the bell button, please do so. And until next time, I will see you on another Mono Story.